You know what this is called. Hand tool pattern baldness. Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to my shop. Now, I've been doing a lot of carving recently, and one of the questions I get the most is how do you sharpen a gouge? Or particularly, how do you sharpen a V-tool with a sharp V? And I've had a lot of people say, you know, I sharpen it just like a chisel and I get it really close, it feels sharp, but it's just not cutting well. What am I doing wrong? So I kind of want to talk through some of the basics on how to sharpen a carving tool. Now, if you think about sharpening a gouge, it's basically just like a chisel. And with a chisel, you're going to put it on the stone and you're going to lift it up until you find that bevel, and then you're going to work it at that bevel angle. Whereas with a gouge, it's the exact same thing. You're going to put it on there and you lift it up until it's at that bevel angle. But rather than just keeping it in one place, you have to rock it back and forth so you can do all the way across. So if you think about it the same, but the only thing you're adding is a wrist movement, you're going to be doing the exact same thing you would do as if you're sharpening a regular bench chisel. So what I have here are DMT diamond stones. I've been using these for quite a while now and I absolutely love them. This frame is something I picked up from Paul Sellers a while ago, and it's very, very useful. I can actually pull these out and use them separately. And I like this with an extra coarse, a medium, and an extra fine. I'm not going to talk about the grits because the grits from diamond stones do not equate to traditional whetstones. So in this case, most of the time when I am using a carving gouge, I almost never use the stones. I'm just always taking it straight back to the strop, and I will strop up the edge until I get a nice sharp edge. I never let this get dull. I never let it get even close to dull. I always take it right back to the strop. So as I'm working, I have a strop beside me, and all I'm doing with that is I'll have my fingers up here close to the front, putting some pressure down. These fingers back here just to separate the angle, and so I get the angle close to its side and I pull it back across. And a few times here, and then I roll it a little bit, and then I roll it a little bit, and then I roll it a little bit. And each time I roll it, I'll do another 10 or so strokes until I get all the way across. And then with this one, I can pick it up, put it in here, and I can buff out the inside. And then with that, I can get a nice sharp edge. But the problem is, what happens if you let it go too long and you let that edge get dull? That's when I want to actually go back to these stones. Now, if I ever drop this and chip it, I'm going to be going back all the way to the extra coarse and reshaping the head. But most of the time, if I let it get dull, I'm only going to be going back to the extra fine. I rarely ever have to do anything to go back any farther. So I'm just going to show you on this particular one how to sharpen a gouge like this. Now I'm just going to use some Windex or whatever you get, put a little bit on there, and then I'm going to set this on here. I'm going to lift it up until I feel that bevel. And then as I go forward and backward, I'm going to roll it. And so I'm just letting my wrist roll here. And I'm trying to lock my arms and elbows all in place and actually bend at the ankles so my body is moving back and forth. And I'm just going to roll it back and forth on here until I get a bit of a burr. And I'm trying to get an even amount of pressure on all points so that I'm not wearing out the corners and I'm not wearing out the mouth anymore or any faster one or the other. And with that, I can see I've got a nice scratch mark going all the way across. On the back, I can feel a burr right there. So with that, now I can feel that burr in there. I'm going to just take it over the strop. I'm going to do the exact same thing I was just talking about, only with the strop here. And just as before, I have two fingers up here. These two are this hand is keeping it back at the right angle. And I'm just going across it and slowly rolling it from one side to the other, making sure that I'm getting an even amount of surface all the way across. I've got that burr on this side. Tip it up. Clean off that burr. And there we go. So now that we've covered the gouge, let's move on to a V-tool. Now a V-tool, if you think about it, is really just two chisels that are side by side. And so if you think about sharpening one chisel and then sharpening the other, you can keep on from there. And so with this tool, actually what I like to do is treat it as a chisel. So I set one side down there and I lift it up, and I'll grind that side. And then I'll roll over and I'll do the other side, I'll set it on there and I'll lift it up until I get the right bevel, and then I'll sharpen that side. But the problem with that is that this is not actually two chisels, and this is what throws a lot of people off. If you think about the V tool, it is not a simple V that comes to a point. It's actually a big U, and these two don't actually come to a point. It rounds over right here at the bottom. And so if you sharpen this one, this side flat and this side flat, you're never ever going to be sharpening this leading edge. The very, very corner where it's rounded over won't ever get sharpened. So how do we fix that? So what I do is I start on one side and I lift it up until I get that bevel angle, and I'm going to sharpen that side. And then I'm going to use my wrist and roll over, just like I do with the gouge, until I get to the other side. And then I'll sharpen on that side. And then I'll roll over, until I get back to the first side. And then I'll roll over until I get back to the second side. And so I'm just going to be going back and forth like that until I get it. Now I'm not spending a lot of time on that bevel because you're putting a very small amount of steel down on the stone. So you're going to be removing material very quickly, and you don't want to remove too much. Eventually, if you do remove too much, you'll see that this point starts to wear out before the edge is due. And I rarely sharpen the inside unless I actually chip the blade, in which case then I have a slipstone that I'll use and actually sharpen the inside with a slipstone. I honestly, I can only think of one time I've ever had to do that, and that was when I first dropped it and I actually chipped out the side and I had to clean out because the burr was rolled up into the inside. So then it's the exact same thing with the strop. You bring it over here, set on its bevel, and strop it, and then roll it over on that tip until you get to the other side and strop it, and then roll it over on the tip until you get to the other side. And that has given you a nice edge, but the problem is now it's kind of rolled a burr up onto the inside. So what I do is I pick up this, I have stropping compound on the side here, and I'll actually just use that corner to buff the inside of that edge. And that rounded edge of the leather will then conform to the inside curve of the V chisel until you get a nice sharp edge in there. Roll the burr back on the other side. Just do a little bit of back and forth until you get a nice sharp edge. So the way I like to actually test if it's sharp is to shave some hair. Now, a chisel that is close to sharp will still shave hair, but it's going to miss a bunch of hairs in between. And so what I like to do is test it, and if in a single pass it cuts every single hair it touches, then you know it's sharp. If it misses a few hairs, then it's not quite sharp. Go back and try it again. So I hope this answered a few of your questions. Now I know this wasn't a comprehensive video, and maybe sometime in the future we'll do more of a comprehensive video on sharpening a whole bunch of carving tools. But this is a basic thing to answer a few of the questions that people often have about why their tool isn't quite sharp enough. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to answer your questions, or feel free to send me an email. I'll answer it there. I'll answer that anytime you have. If you did like the video, please hit like and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also want to say an incredible thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why content like this keeps happening. If you'd like to help out or find out more about that, you can do so right down here. If you did like this video, feel free to check out one of my others. You might find something you like there. And until next time, have a wonderful day.